Cool. Great. So first off, I'm Sean Walden. I work at Virginia Commonwealth University. I am the Virginia Talent Opportunity Partnership Program Coordinator, which is a mouthful. So we as a team have rebranded to RVA Collab. And for those who might be new to these events or new to RVA Collab, we are a partnership between Chamber RVA and VCU, working on behalf of Chev and a VTOP grant to increase talent retention in the Richmond region and increase access to equitable and paid work-based learning, experiential learning opportunities for our students. So we host these kinds of events to bring employers and higher ed partners together so that we can talk about relevant topics and get to know each other a bit better and sort of collaborate generally and build a network. So today we are hosting a virtual roundtable. This was sort of brought on by a series of conversations over the past year or so, but recently we found an article written by our guest Saskia Campbell here from George Mason about 3 ways colleges and universities can help address unpaid internships, which is sort of our prime or our main priority as the RVA Collab. And in this article, Saskia talks about advocating for pay with employers and collaborating with employers, offering alternatives to unpaid internships as our institutions can, and creating internship funds if possible when we can. And so I think Richmond is a unique region in that we have not just a diverse population, but we have a diverse group of employers in our region and higher ed institutions in our region. So bringing everyone together, and we're lucky to have a good representation of our higher ed partners today, gives us a chance to speak on each of these topics a little bit, brainstorm, collaborate, talk with one another, and look for solutions, figure out how we can address these topics in our own region and in our own institutions, and what that might look like for each individual institution, since we're all, different sizes. Before we get started and before I pass it off to our roundtable participants, I will say the chat is open. Please feel free to use it. At the end, we plan to save some time for a sort of Q&A. And if you think of a question as we're having these conversations and you really want to make sure that it gets written down, throw it in the chat and we'll get to it at the end and make sure that it gets addressed. Yeah, so I will go ahead and toss it to Saskia. If you could just give a real quick introduction and just a brief background of your position and your role, and then we can move around the group and introduce ourselves.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to be with you today, and thank you for the opportunity. So I am Saskia Campbell, Executive Director of University Career Services at George Mason University. And so we are located in 4 distributed campuses across Northern Virginia and also in Songdo, South Korea. We have a very large student body, diverse student body, and as such, are really leaning into the social justice nature of our work in higher education, but within career services specifically, as we are trying to remove barriers to students in their hopes to attain greater social and economic mobility. So I'm super thrilled to be part of this panel discussion today.
Thank you. Janae, you want to go ahead?
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Janae Driver. I am currently the Assistant Director of Employer Relations at University of Richmond. I specialize in employer and alumni engagement within the industries of government, nonprofit, education, consulting, and fashion and beauty. I've been with U of R for about 1.5 years now. I am currently enrolled in the Masters of Human Resources Management program here, and prior to transitioning into higher ed, I worked in the corporate world for almost 10 years. So thank you for having me this morning.
Of course. And Joseph, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
No problem. Good morning to everyone. And it's just so exciting to be a part of this dialogue with my colleagues. I feel like we're just having a conversation today, which is exciting. I am Joseph Lyons. I serve as the Executive Director for Student Engagement and Career Services. And this was sort of a position that was created for me. And it's really interesting in that it impacts, yes, career development, but as it relates to students' academic performance, their student engagement and retention at the university. I'm really excited, and our office provides services to the entire institution, even though we have partners across campus. This is actually my 35th year in higher education. Let's take an exhale. But it's really been interesting to see how the whole career venue has changed when we first started with just career placement. And now we have transcended into career readiness and development and how our parents want to return on the investment. So, internships are really key for our students and experiential opportunities. So again, excited to add to the dialogue today.
Great, thanks. Jessica?
Good morning, everyone. I am so sorry that I'm unable to share my my screen. I'm having some technical difficulties, but my name is Miss Saskia Gilbert. I am the Director of Workforce Development and Training here at Virginia Union University. I have worked in higher education for over 15 years. And just like Mr. Lyons said, we at Virginia Union University, we are focusing on still the career services component, but are shifting into making sure that our students have the skill sets as well as the experience with building up their resumes, with having internships so that they can become gainfully employed upon graduation. So once again, good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here with everyone this morning.
Great, thanks. Samara?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Samara Reynolds. I am Director of Career Services at Virginia Commonwealth University, VCU. You may know that we have a decentralized model of career services on our campus. So there is an engineering career services office, there's a business career services office, and I get to run the central career operation, which serves technically all students across our primary Monroe Park campus and the MCV Health Sciences campus here at VCU. We have about 30,000 students, and our work has been exciting and not at all quiet over the last few years, especially in the realm of internships. And I feel really lucky that our unit has gotten to shepherd our campus into having an internship funding program. So I know we'll talk more about that today, but certainly it's been high on our mind and radar how we can bridge that gap for students so that internships are not just something that only certain students can engage in, but it really is something that that work-based learning is accessible to all. So looking forward to the conversation today.
Awesome. So again, I'll thank our panelists for being here, and I'll thank everyone who's attending to listen in and participate in the conversation. I'm going to pass it off to Celisa Nolan, who is sort of my partner at the Chamber RVA, and she's going to kick off our roundtable for us.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Again, my name is Celisa Nolan, and I am a program manager at Chamber RVA. I work in talent and workforce. And again, super grateful to have everybody here. And let's kick off our roundtable. So our first topic of discussion is higher education institutions and employers collaborating and connecting. So good morning, Ms. Campbell. In the article that you co-authored, you discussed the importance of paid internships, and I wanted to know what are some strategies you and your team utilize when speaking with businesses about the importance of paid internships. In your article, you referred to consulting with employers and even having one-on-one consultations with employers to further encourage investment in interns. Can you elaborate on your approach to these conversations and relationships?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes. And I would like to just recognize that I was a co-author on the article with Christine Prus-Vergara of Handshake. And so the partnership between higher ed and employers is absolutely essential. And I think the value add service that we provide employers recruiting on our campuses is to provide data and insights into student behavior. That's what we're experts in, right? And so we see a lot in terms of the kinds of opportunities that students are most interested in, where they're gravitating, what they apply to. in whatever system or platform we might be using. And so that's one of the things that we can do is run reports. And it's clear that we are seeing a really awesome trend. Again, I think it's an exciting time to be in our field because there is a shift that's happening. In the last few years, we've definitely seen a significant drop in the number of unpaid internships in our system, to the point where, I just looked yesterday, and for internships in the Commonwealth, only 13% of those posted at Mason are unpaid at this time. And they tend to be concentrated in certain industries, namely, state and local government, nonprofits, healthcare, those kinds of sectors. And so that's information we share with employers so that they know, kind of what the competition is, how successful they're going to be in their recruiting efforts, and might provide the ammunition that they need to advocate for resources within their organization if they're going to, be competitive and attracting top talent, diverse talent. And so, I think that's one of the best value add things that we can do. We are seeing an increase in internships overall, an increase in paid internships, a decrease in unpaid internship, to address the question that just popped up. And it seems like my colleagues are seeing similar kinds of trends. So I think, when employers reach out, how can I be more effective in my recruiting at your institution? Why am I not getting enough applicants? These kinds of things we're able to share with them. And we do that one-on-one, but then we'll also do webinars so that at scale we can reach more employers with this information.
Thank you so much for that response. I will now turn it over to Janae Driver. Good morning, Ms. Driver, how are you? We would love to hear your approach on speaking to businesses as a member of an employer relations team. If you can elaborate on that, please.
Yeah, so similarly to what Saskia said, it's important to provide the data and analytics and just kind of show what is most effective, what resonates the most with the students. It's important to just kind of manage those expectations. We do offer funding and fellowship programs as well, but they're only in the summer. So if employers aren't able to make their opportunities align with those, we try to show them like, hey, you may not get as many applicants as you anticipate. It may be difficult, but you should remove any other hurdles that students may have if the opportunity is unpaid, such as if the internship is downtown, they may have to pay for parking, for instance. So we would hope that they'd be able to remove some of those barriers. So that way, the students could have access to this opportunity during the school year without having to, sacrifice or anything like that.
Thank you so much for sharing your perspective, Janae. I now want to turn it over to Joseph Lyons. Good morning, Mr. Lyons. How are you? Could you talk about how VSU connects with Richmond and Petersburg employers?
Sure. I think the best way that we've had an opportunity for Richmond employers to connect with us is to invite them to our Rich campus. So we've actually had a number of focus groups, especially post-COVID, a little challenging during COVID, but certainly during post-COVID, where we can bring employers together to give a tour of our campus, to really dive into our academic programs, and then to discuss expectations for the internship opportunities for our students and what our students are seeking. We've even included a panel of students who have dialogued with employers about opportunities as well. So that's one of the ways that it's been helpful for us. Another thing is that we're excited in that we have a rich alumni base here. And so our alumni are excited to get our students hired at their organizations. I can think of the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond. And so they participate in our career expos. They meet with us, especially employers who really want an intensive relationship with our campus. They meet with us on a regular basis so we can customize what their experiences will look like in terms of internship opportunities for our students. So we spend a lot of time connecting with employers. Then I have, as well as my small staff, have set out time to do site visits at the experiences, as well as having students to tour in that area. PPD just contacted us. They're called something else now. And so they've contacted us, and then we've had a tour of students to assist and to meet with hiring managers, Altria, other companies as well. So actually bringing our students out of this environment to, out of this environment to our companies has been helpful and resourceful.
Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on that. Is there anyone else from the roundtable that would like to chime in on higher education institutions and employers collaborating and connecting, or is there anyone from the audience that would like to chime in on this topic as well? Just go ahead and raise your hand or unmute yourself.
I'll mention a quick note in the internship postings and the paid internship postings over time. I brought some data too. You know, we're coming to y'all with information here. So, you know, looking at the academic year, fiscal year 21, we had 11,000 internships posted in Handshake. Looking at academic year 22, it was 20,000. And already for this year, we've got 15,000, almost 16,000 in the system. And the percentage of paid has gone from 83% to 88%, and we're already up to 89% so far for this year. And so to echo Saskia's point and to address Beth's question, we are seeing the internship postings increase and the paid ratio there increase as well, which is great. And it means that what we're saying to our employers and what they're hearing from our students is impacting some of that decision making.
Thank you so much, Samira, for sharing that. I see Beth, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Salisa. I keep hearing a lot about the notion that imposter syndrome with students is very real, that they'll read a job posting and assume they don't have the right background for it, whether it's previous experience or durable skills. Can one of you all speak to that and how that, your experience with that and how you overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is well documented, right? That, you know, students, particularly those from marginalized identities, are less likely to feel that they are qualified. Part of that is internally an issue, but others is the signals that they're getting from society and the experience that they've had, whether in the classroom or in other professional settings where their abilities have been questioned, although they were similarly qualified to folks in other, you know, identities. And so it's a vicious cycle, one that we need to attack at all levels, at the personal, interpersonal, organizational, and systemic levels. And I think we can do that by building confidence and helping students to be able to articulate their skills and their qualifications. I think we can do that by giving students more meaningful experiences and opportunities where they can shine and showcase their talents. I think we can do that when we advocate on behalf of a student and show how, you know, between two similarly qualified students, why this one might be a good choice. So I think there are lots of different ways that we can address imposter syndrome. But I think creating more inclusive, equitable work environments is essential to that. In regards to pay, because I do think that matters, right? So why do people think they're not as qualified, they're not as worthy? Because they're not compensated fairly. And when we see that, you know, women are, you know, earning less than men on the dollar, women of color in particular, Black women at the bottom of that list. And so I think this pay discussion is central to that imposter phenomenon and syndrome. Why, if I'm doing the same work, am I not getting the same pay? I must not be doing, you know, what's going on there, I think is something that people struggle with.
I know at VSU, we really work with our students in trying to get them to understand how to showcase those skills through NACE that employers are highly seeking. And we've been successful in partnering with our faculty because we know those skills are utilized in the classroom. And so we've even partnered with the faculty to help us help our students to embrace those skills on their resume, during talking points, during an interview. And then that becomes a confidence builder because they can look at these key skills and how these skills they've used at the level that they're on. So really trying to get them to utilize those skills, what we've been doing.
I would like to chime in. At Virginia Union University, just the other day, we had a building your professional brand workshop. And, of course, when it comes to, creating who you are when you're entering onto campus, being cautious of what you post on social media, but it also comes to dealing with how you are building yourself far as your career goals, how you are articulating it, building your brand on your resume, building your brand as you volunteer and you participate, which, that's what we're trying to, reinforce is not that we don't want you to be human and do all of these great things, but, focus on your brand other than just what others see on social media. And so it's all about building up those skill sets and pretty much carrying through your career goals.
One more quick note to address Beth's question on how maybe employers can combat this a little bit. I know both for full-time and internship positions, we've seen success with employers putting an actual line item in the job description ahead of the qualification section that says, if you don't be intimidated by this, if you don't have every single qualification, but you're interested in the role, please still apply. And even just that statement, we've had students come back and say, oh, well, they mentioned that I didn't have to have everything. So that made me feel like I could go for it. So just calling it out that we know that job descriptions can be intimidating to look at it all in one place, but to humanize that a little bit and encourage students right in the posting to apply, even if they're not sure yet. If they're interested, they should go for it.
And to Samara's point, I think there is a movement also to scrutinize how many qualifications we even list in a position description. I know that's happening at Mason, right? Can you really find all these things in one person? Being honest about that and delineating, between required and preferred, I think a little bit more intentionally is also something that we're seeing a trend around.
Thank you all so much for sharing on this topic. I think we're going to move on to the next topic, and I'll pass it over to Sean, and we'll save the other questions towards the end of the roundtable.
Thanks, Lisa. Sorry, I just lost my mouse on my other monitor. Great. So for the second topic, I think we'll jump into internship funding alternatives and internship funding programs within our institutions. I know VCU has recently started an internship funding program. I was hoping, Samara, maybe you could take a minute and touch on that, give a little bit of background as to how that was born and how those funds are found and how the first year went.
Absolutely. I feel like this is a nice full circle moment because Joe and I were sitting on a panel at the very launch of our internship funding pilot year last spring. And now we've had a pilot year to reflect upon and to build on for now second year. So yes, VCU, we really started with having to prove the concept within our campus community. We wrote a white paper collaboratively among a number of colleagues at the university who had leadership positions related to career services or related to employer development, to say internships are important, funding for internships are important, and we believe that the university should dedicate funds to this effort. And so based on that, a lot of good conversations were had, and we were supported at the division level with division level fundings to pilot a first year of the internship funding program. And so RVP said, I believe in this idea, let's start small, here's one-time funding, let's see what we can do, but we're going to need data. We need data on what you plan to capture, and then we need in-depth data and stories and such afterwards to be able to say, not only was this great one go round, but how can we build upon this and gain support to grow it in the future? So we got that funding and we pulled together things fairly quickly last year. So we found out in November that the funding was allocated, and we knew we had to launch applications in January with the hopes of getting funding into student pockets in May. And so we're really proud of how that went. It was a cross-campus collaboration. We had reviewers for the program across campus. We had The scholarship hub from our financial aid office is the portal that we used for students to be able to apply. We have marketing in all different spaces. And we were proud to be able to award 51 students $197,700 in total, almost $200,000 to engage in summer internship experiences. And in seeing how that went, we were really pleased, because even though we did a demographic blind review process, it was really just based on their essays and the information that they provided. We exceeded our application goals. We had 147 students apply, and our awardee groups ended up being 43% underrepresented minority students, 41% first generation students, 47% Pell eligible students, 69% female students. And so we were excited that the students that we did not have to limit in any way how the applications were put forth. We made it very general, but really marketed in the places that students were spending their time with the advisors that they know and trust, so they could pursue these opportunities. And so we had students from across the college, across the university, in a variety of majors, and that the outcomes were very strong for that program. And so it gave us data to say, not only did this bridge the gap for students, especially those in humanities and sciences, and in the arts, as well, that may not have access to paid internship experiences, but it was also a closing of the gap for those that had paid internship experiences lined up with great corporation opportunities, but they didn't have the funding to put down housing deposit to go to the city that was going to be hosted in. They didn't have funding to travel to the internship in a city that was not where they were based. And so it was really bridge the gap funding in a unique way as well. And so based on that success, this year 2 of our program has both university funding, and development and alumni relations was able to allocate fund from our Student Life and Learning Fund to grow this program as well. So we're excited to see where it goes from here.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Jessica Gilbert, I was wondering if I could ask you a bit about Virginia Union's internship funding practices and how you as an institution and you and your team connect students to alternative funding methods.
Sure. So here at Virginia Union, we do have workforce development and training, which within our program, we have a workforce scholarship where students are able to receive a stipend, where they go through several skill set trainings regarding critical thinking, communication, collaboration. There are a total of 5 C's. I get them twisted up every time I say it. But in addition to, and I'm sorry, my cell phone is ringing. It's in the other room. Bear with me one moment. In addition to making sure that, students do have, and I'm sorry, bear with me one moment. I am back. I do apologize for that. In addition to just making sure that students have internal opportunities once they enter into the campus, so that they are able to become a little bit more familiar with the culture, the area, whether they are here or either they are afar. And so it gives them an opportunity to focus on building their skill sets as well as their knowledge in their career path, while pursuing opportunities within interning. And so with the internship opportunity, it allows them to help eliminate their debt while still pursuing their education. We're giving companies an opportunity to pretty much invest in this opportunity, where it's not necessarily a feeder to, if you help fund the opportunity, it definitely brings forth opportunities to your company, but it gives an opportunity for students to be able to learn about the fields. So they are basically partnering with us to help do trainings. They're partnering with us to help teach different things that are currently going on in the real world. At the same time, the things that they are learning in the classroom. And so with the overall opportunity, it's definitely given us at Virginia Union University the opportunity to have all of our students experience in internships. Prior to COVID, we were averaging about 64% of our students being active in internships. And our goal is to exceed over that. And once again, to accomplish that 100% goal, we are looking to pretty much partner with various companies, various opportunities to continue the trend where we are leading.
Thanks, Jessica. Saskia, I know in the past, you and I have talked a little bit about these sort of internship funding opportunities that you and your team at George Mason are offering students. I was wondering if you could touch on that and maybe talk about any similarities or differences that may exist between your strategies and Samara and Jessica's strategies that they've touched on.
Sure. So again, an unpaid internship scholarship fund is a Band-Aid. This is not the solution. This is the stopgap. The solution is employers pay interns. But in the interim, until we can get to 100% paid internships, I think this is what universities can do to help support students. So, I think leaders can decide to allocate resources that they have in this manner. And so, a percentage of my budget I put towards offsetting the cost that students incur by doing unpaid internships. Also by applying for grants within the institution, external to the university. I think, getting involved with the Mason, or in my case, Mason Giving Day campaign, but whatever the Giving Day campaign is for an institution, seeing if you can advocate to get this cause elevated to a university level. I think these are some things that can be done, again, kind of in the interim to help support students until all the internships are paid. But it sounds like my colleagues are doing awesome stuff.
Well, I was just going to add, if I can. First, I want to thank Samara from PCU because we actually met with my colleague, and this year we've received funding for our internship program. So we're really excited about that, and stay tuned for data and information regarding that. But even in addition to that, we have a number of collaborations with various departments, such as our College of Education, who you mentioned grants. They have written a grant, and we have partnered with a number of at least 5 employers who hire our students for internships during the summer, but the grant then pays for their salary for participating. And then it also lends itself to a more intensive relationship with the employer and the student. Once we had a student who was having some challenges in their internship experience, and the employer called me. We had a 3-way meeting and discussion. And then based on that, we were able to set goals for that student going forward to help him to be successful. So an internship that might have ended with maybe not the most positive evaluation became a better experience and a more positive evaluation based on that.
And I'd like to say something as well. We also offer funding for our students for summer internships as well. And so they're able to set goals similarly to what Joseph was saying, goals that work for them and the employer within their internship. So specific goals for that employer-student relationship. And this has allowed employers to have really great experiences with their students, and then to also come back and try to recruit again. And as we build that relationship, we're able to work with them to maybe, they pay a portion instead of the whole grant that we provide covering the student salary for the summer.
Thanks. Thank you, Joseph and Janae, for sharing that. Something Saskia, you said in particular that caught my attention was this idea of seeking grants and those funds that might be available to our institutions in that way. I was wondering if you or really anyone on the panel could just take a moment to explain how our institutions can best connect with those resources, identify those grants, and then put themselves in a position to apply for them and hopefully receive those funds.
Well, the significant grants, I think, would have to be pursued at an institution-wide level. So kind of working through the fundraising arm of the organization, the grant writers, it's a huge endeavor. And so I would say university partnerships, different offices coming together would be critical for that, whether, academic units, the diversity, equity, and inclusion arm, as well as career coming together for things like, there was a Strata grant, for example, that we pursued. And so that really was an institution-wide commitment to put forward a competitive package. And so I think, again, smaller internal grants would be maybe through your parents fund. That's where we've gotten some resources. But then the external grants, I think you would need more of a collaborative effort to pursue successfully.
Great. Anybody else want to add anything?
Yeah, I'm happy to comment. I agree. I think that the collaboration and partnerships across offices has made really the difference for us. And VCU has specific offices of research and institutional innovation that have experts in that area. But even if you don't, I think there are so many grant opportunities out there that people don't apply for because they feel intimidated. It's similar to what we mentioned with students in the process, right? And so even our library has resources on finding grants, applying for grants, et cetera. So thinking about some of the resources at your university, those who are really good at research, who may be able to support, but also not canceling yourself or your institution out just because you may have a great idea, but not sure about the resources piece, or be able to write a proposal that pulls at the heartstrings, but you may still need some more data, et cetera. So it may be a starting place. And there may be grants that maybe you apply the first time and the answer is no, but please apply again. And then you can get feedback on how to continue building that application in the right direction. So I'd encourage folks to not be intimidated by the process, and also know that there are those at the university and otherwise that can help with the research process.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. So let's move on to our final topic of discussion for our panelists. And it's, I think, very related to the internship funding that we were just speaking about. So in instances where maybe institutions have yet to establish internship funding programs, or even if we have established them, that doesn't mean we can provide funds to everyone who needs them or wants them or deserves them at our institutions. So what are some alternatives as higher education institutions that we can provide students or connect students with to give them good, high quality work-based learning or experiential learning opportunities? Saskia, in your article, you touch on this a bit near the end in your final paragraph, and I recently found the growth program at GMU, which seems to sort of fall in this space. I was wondering if you could sort of take this topic and provide some advice.
Sure. So, again, I think, students really benefit from being able to apply their learning in a real world work environment, in context. And so, on campus, the place that they can do that is through an on-campus job, whether it's a federal work study position or a wage position, ideally related to their career goals, right? So that IT student who's helping with desktop support, or, the events management intern that's supporting the conference center. I think it's ideal when we can get students in positions on campus where they're earning money, but it's also helping them to develop a relevant experience to match their career interests. Oftentimes students need nudging. They need prodding to help them make the connection. This is not just the job that helps me pay my living expenses. This is relevant experience that's worthy to be put on my resume. I can talk about with confidence in an interview, and how we help students to make those connections and to gain that sense is by having conversations with them, helping them to make the connections. And so with our growth student talent development program, which students who work in the Division of Student Affairs all participate in, so it's operating such that about 600 to 700 students are participating annually. They are meeting with their supervisor in on-campus positions for goal setting purposes, but then also for students to do self-evaluation of the career readiness skills that they are gaining in that role. So again, helping to make the connection between their job and the NACE career competencies, so problem solving, critical thinking, teamwork, collaboration, communication, leadership, technology, et cetera. You know, where do I think I am? And then the supervisor evaluates the students on those career readiness competencies as well, because part of the thing that we're trying to solve for is the disconnect. Students oftentimes, it depends on the institution. Some are overconfident in their abilities and rate themselves more highly than their supervisor would. And at some institutions, they're very humble, right? And they're lacking the confidence, and they might devalue their skills and abilities. And the program is meant to bring that gap closer together, to right size it. So the students do the self-evaluation and get feedback from their supervisor in the first semester. So affirming where their strengths are, but then giving them ideas for ways they can enhance professional development opportunities where they can grow their skills. And then they repeat the process in the second semester. So it's called growth because the idea is that they would grow in their career readiness skills and that would be measured on this assessment. We use Skill Survey as our vendor platform partner to capture this information and to generate the career readiness reports that students go over with their supervisor. So it's something that we're really proud of and students see great value in.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. I think that sounds like an excellent approach, and it's exciting to hear that that's, you know, being implemented at institutions around the state. This is, I guess, sort of for all of our panelists, anybody who is interested in providing a response or might have some insight into this. So as far as continuing to provide experiential learning and work-based learning opportunities through especially curriculum, are there any techniques or any strategies that have been implemented at any of your institutions to connect students within the classroom to employers and provide them, you know, these real problem-based experiences that can help them prepare for what it will actually be like to work in that field that they're interested in?
I was going to add, at VSU, it's really interesting how we have a number of students who are able to serve as research interns for various departments. And that is, especially for our first year students who might have some challenges in obtaining an internship. And then in our College of Business department, they have a very comprehensive shadowing program where they link students to various employers to shadow them for a day or a period of time. And then some of those students are able to then receive credit for an internship requirement for the department. So the shadowing program seems to be a good approach. I did also want to share that it's interesting. I work with some students who are able to sort of volunteer with an employer. Again, it's not an internship, so it's not as sort of like a micro internship, not as a long period of time, but there are incentives that will come with that. Letters of recommendation. Once working with an employer, the student was such a rock star that they gave the student a stipend for that opportunity. So helping our students, I think, to be innovative and creative is what we need to do in the field and helping them to gain those opportunities and experiences.
I would jump in next. Here at Virginia Union, with workforce development, we are intentionally working with our schools. And so we are collaborating with our deans just to make sure that we are giving our faculty members an opportunity to have representatives from different employers that are looking to engage with our students. Because before, of course, a lot of employers would like to do pop-ups, set up tables, do all of those great things. But now post pandemic, a lot of our classes are virtual. And so this gives an opportunity to do the pop-ins, possibly help teach a section of the class or work on a special project for our internship courses. There may be a special project that's created by that employer so that the students also can get, the learnings and the hands-on experience, but not necessarily at the location, but yet within the classroom. And so that's what we're doing here, just to be a little bit more innovative as well as inclusive with our students who are here and afar.
That's great information. Thanks for sharing that. We're at, let's see, 10:46. So I'll give one last opportunity to our panelists if they want to touch on, I guess, really any of these topics, if they felt they had a point they wanted to make that they didn't get a moment to address, but especially if they want to talk on this last topic concerning programs at our institutions that will connect students with work-based learning and experiential learning opportunities. Otherwise, we're going to move on. Janae?
I did want to just, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. I did just want to emphasize, I think, especially for our students, I think the more that we stretch our students and put them outside of their comfort levels, the more that they'll reap the benefits in terms of their career and academic goals. So in addition to having career expos on campus and having employers come to campus, we take students out. We've gone to VCU's Career Expo. Thank you for inviting us. I'm leaving and jumping on the bus in 10 minutes to go to the CIAA in Maryland, and they have a huge expo that's on Thursday for our students. I just came back from the Bear Conference a couple of weekends ago. And so that's where I think the students really get to mix and mingle with diverse students, as well as meeting with employers that they might not have a chance to meet with on our campus for opportunities. So continually stretching our students to get them where they need to go.
And similarly to you, Joseph, we actually take students out as well. We take groups of students to visit employers in New York City over the holiday break, which is just a great time for them to get to know the culture of organizations, get to see alums that work there and stuff like that. We also have some programs here on campus, like our Spider Business Hub, that pairs students with local companies looking for help on short-term projects. So students are able to get paired with those. It's free of charge to the businesses in the community. And it's just a really great program where they can help with these short-term projects and get that experience, but not have to leave campus or anything like that.
Yeah, Sean, on this topic, I would like to add, though, that I think we want to be transparent and honest, though. You know, we want to give students more options. And I would always say that class projects and teamwork and research papers and study abroad, all these different things are valuable and help students to gain skills. They are worthy to be put on a resume, talked about in an interview. And employers do not value these things the same as they do a paid internship. They do not have the same kind of market value in terms of a job offer or starting salary. And so I think in as much as we want to be more expansive in our definition of experiential learning, we also need to be honest with students. You know, an internship is still where it's at in terms of employer behavior. When they're given two equally qualified candidates, they're going to opt for the student who's done the internship in their organization within the field. Before they, you know, take students with some of these other forms of experiences. So to me, a lot of these other options shouldn't be seen as alternatives to internships, but complements to internships. Or, you know, we're calling them internships, but another field, practica, field placement, student teaching, co-op, right? Those kinds of things I think are synonymous and on par. But some of these other things I think are not. And so this is where good career advice and guidance and career planning, I think, you know, institutions could do a much better job of helping students to develop integrated academic and co-curricular plans to help them reach their career goals.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, that's a great perspective and a good way of putting that, I think, Saskia. Thank you. Great. So 10:50. Yeah, Lisa, I was just about to pass it off to you.
Yeah, let's get into these questions because there are a lot and everybody has something to add. So our first question is, if employers don't have an established relationship with higher education, how should the employer representative establish the relationship? Anybody can take that question.
I think the good news is that most career offices have somebody dedicated to employer relations. So if you send even a general email to our inboxes to say, hey, how can I get connected with your students? then we can take the ball and run with that. There's typically a starting point for engagement. There might be a conversation to set up, et cetera, but don't be afraid to start from the beginning. Our institutions are always happy to support however we can. And I think that we've mentioned across this call a lot of small ways to get involved, whether it's coming into the classroom, serving on an alumni panel, letting somebody shadow you. It doesn't have to be all the way to I'm ready to hire, 15 interns for this summer. We can advise on a lot of those things too. So I say just start with the outreach and we will get you where you need to go.
Would anybody else like to add to that? Nope. Okay, moving on to the next question. Aaron said, Joseph's model of taking students to employers seems like a possibility for a new form of problem or project-based learning through reverse internships. Are our panelists familiar with this model?
I'll pop in and say that this was a model that was raised to me on our transformative learning initiative at VCU. And so I was just curious if this is something that is coming down the pike or how prevalent this is at other institutions.
Again, I was the one who threw it out there. Again, especially with our new employers, they're eager to engage our students at their site and to allow them to meet with various persons in departments and to have this more intensive discussion on site about where they would see our student talent. So on the average, I think we do very ambitious semester, but at least 3 to 5 employer site visits for the year. And then of course, lending its way to the summer for more opportunities for that.
Okay, awesome. This question comes from Beth. Does anyone have data on the sizes of companies offering paid internships versus the sizes offering unpaid?
I think for those of us that use, Handshake or other systems, we can probably run that data and share that with you at that level, certainly. But I also think, to some of the points that have been made today, it's important for organizations to not limit themselves and say, oh, well, we're small, so we can't possibly pay. Well, the Fair Labor Standards Act says that you must find a way to pay or to partner to make that possible. So I think it might be less so how can we have proof of purchase that large organizations pay and small organizations don't, and really how do we simply bridge that gap, even if it means starting small or getting support to do so.
Samara, let's talk offline more about this, but my fear is if there is a mandate that if anyone's offering any kind of internship, it must be paid, some of these smaller companies are just going to not offer them. And we might see the net number of opportunities shrink because of that, unless some of these third-party funding mechanisms stay in place. But anyway, we can talk about that later. That's just something I was thinking about, that it's a problem, and we don't want companies to use the fact that they're small as an excuse. But if it's really, a thing, then maybe we have to back up and give them more of a priority conversation about why it's important in the larger regional picture. But we can talk further. I know we're kind of running out of time.
Yeah, and I would just like to add, it just depends on how they want to spend their money, because they're going to spend it regardless, right? Because it also costs organizations money to recruit and hire and retain talent, right? And so internships are a pipeline. That's why organizations use them. And so it's a way for them to train and develop and source full-time employees. And so again, they're making the investment. They're going to spend the money one way or the other. And to Samara's point, starting small, anything is better than nothing. And so even if they're not able to pay the most competitive rate, which is $20 an hour for an intern, they can start with stipends to offset the cost of transportation, parking, food. They can offer something, and students really do appreciate that.
Awesome. And I think our last question will be from Allison, and it says, how else can our regional higher ed institutions better connect and collaborate with each other? anybody can take that.
Well, I think that's actually going on. I think, a number of us belong to VACE, the Virginia Association for Colleges and Employers, and NACE. And I know we've had meetings and discussions at those venues. I think there's also a state meeting of all the directors. So I feel even like today has been conversation and dialogue as well. So I just see that it's going to continue to improve based on what we've done so far.
Awesome. I think I will pass it back to Sean to close us out.
Thank you. Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, I'll give just a very quick one final single question. If there's anyone out there who hasn't gotten a chance and would like to ask our panelists a question, or if our panelists would like to ask each other a question or make any points, I think we have time for one. If not, okay, great. Well, I want to thank everyone for attending. I want to thank you, Saskia.
Oh, I think Laura had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Laura.
Yeah, it may be bigger than the 3 minutes we have here, but I guess the general question is, what do you perceive as the faculty's role in helping facilitate these connections between students and career services and employers? And I'm trying to take on a larger role for that in our math department, but I actually have an engineering background, and I benefited greatly from a structured internship program at my alma mater. And there's so much improvement and great things going on in the College of Humanities and Sciences at VCU, but we don't have that culture of internships in the math department. So maybe the larger question is relevant here. What would be an individual faculty member's role, or how could they best help get part of this process?
Real quick, I'm very fortunate and that I sort of beat the pavement, so to speak, when it comes to connecting with faculty. So typically at the opening of every faculty and staff conference each semester, I'm doing some form of a presentation that I invite faculty to that's relative to career services and the collaboration with the faculty. Then individually, I go to, along with my limited staff, to faculty departmental meetings in the beginning of the semester. And then for venues such as our career fair, I've pulled together faculty partners across our campus to ensure that their students will participate, and we'll have employers that are relevant to each major or discipline. So sometimes I don't know if faculty do know what their role is. So at least pulling them in to make them aware of what's going on and then educating them on the trends, I think is where you can start. And I see someone said extra credit. That's true. That's exactly. That's how we get a lot of them there.
Bringing a class to an event sounds cool. Our students have so many different schedules, but that does sound like a great idea.
Yeah, well, most campuses offer, either big general fairs that have a lot of great things, or a number of niche fairs through the year. So students might have different choices. But I think individual faculty members have more power in this conversation than you might think. Just their influence over students to say, hey, are you thinking about an internship? How can I support you? It could go a really long way in getting them connected to the resources they need, let alone being willing to supervise an independent study or sign the paperwork that's needed for them to get credit for an internship experience. I think that can absolutely happen at the individual level, but at the departmental level, I think even more is possible, and having that conversation is really critical.
I'd like to add something also. It's also important that we all work together, and then for the faculty to reach out to the Career Services Department or Workforce Development Department, because we are here to basically work for the same cause, right? And so it's all about building that, what we like to call at Virginia Union Community, where we're all working towards the same goal.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great question, Laura, and great insight from our panelists. Thank you. So again, thanks everybody for being here, for attending, for participating, asking questions, and taking part in the conversation. Thank you, Saskia, for being here and for providing an insightful article that you co-wrote that kind of kicked off this conversation, I think. Thank you to all of our panelists, Janae, Joseph, Jessica, Samara. I appreciate you all taking the time to come talk with us today. We do these events ideally monthly, and if we aren't doing this, we're trying to do something in person if we can. So for anyone who's new to the RVA Collab, hopefully you stay in touch and we'll keep you involved and keep building this network and this community of ours. We actually are in the works of getting another coffee hour planned in, I think, the second to last week in March. That's probably going to be focused on apprenticeships and employers getting involved with higher ed and vice versa through that. So keep an eye out for further communications and hopefully keep your calendars clear around that time of the month, and we'll get you in and have another good conversation.
Thank you guys so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.